a lot of my culture, you know? You're like, instead of hiring actors and everything, we're just going to slightly,
Want to hear the story of how that happened?
Yeah, I would love to.
It's really pretty cool. So, I've been trying to make films about American history since like the mid 70s. And I'd had some success, a couple Academy Award nominations, but I'd hit the jackpot when this big series in 1990 came out on the Civil War series, which, used the photographs and stuff like that. And our idea was to energetically explore the landscape of a painting and treat an old photograph like it was a feature filmmaker's master shot, having a wide, a medium, a close, a tilt, a pan, a reveal, an insert of detail. So we were just sort of very energetically exploring the landscape of each image. And so I got a call in 2002, November, and it said it was Steve Jobs. I went, really? And he goes, yeah. He said, will you come out and visit me? And I said, yeah, that's me knocking at the door. So a few weeks later, in December of 2002, I'm in a room with him. We're talking, and he brings in a couple of pretty nervous engineers.
Yeah,
and and I'm a Luddite, and particularly
you're a Luddite.
Yeah, meaning I'm not a big computer person. It represents a group in England in the 19th century who were opposed to technological changes. And so...
Okay, so Mennonite, Luddite, Amish, similar.
Well, not quite. It wasn't religious as much as it was a kind of a social... Anyway.
Okay, so Amish without the dairy, kind of.
That's right. Exactly. So it's basically folks who are opposed to it. I'm not. I'm just inept. So my children and my grandchildren help me with all of that. Anyway, Steve is saying, look, we've been working on this thing, and every Mac computer that comes out next month, January of 2003, is going to have this feature on it. And he's showing me, and it's sort of like you can upload your photographs and pan and zoom on them very, very simply, a kind of crude, superficial version of what we do or try to do with our stuff to wake up the image, to wake the dead, So I'm looking at it and I'm kind of going, cool, because I don't really know what's going on. And he said, so we'd like to keep the working title. And I said, what's that? And he said, The Ken Burns Effect. I said, I don't do commercial endorsements. He goes, what? And the engineers kind of blanch. And I'd known a little bit that he had a temper. He never showed it to me. But we went back to his office. And after an hour, I worked out agreement that he could use it, but I'd...
yeah, I heard he had a temper too. I heard his iPhone always had a cracked screen.
Maybe. But I know some folks who got yelled at. He said, what? So at the end, I walked out, and he basically agreed to give us what turned out to be over $1 million of hardware and software that we gave away to nonprofits, except for one or two computers that stayed in the office because we didn't have a good Mac computer in the office. And then we became friends for the rest of his life. And so whenever I visited Silicon Valley, I'd stay with him. His kids, his daughter became an intern for us for a couple of semesters. So it was a really good relationship, but it is really funny. It's the technological tail that wags the dog of what I'm trying to do, which is take these old things where you don't have newsreels or you don't have living witnesses and try to wake up moments in the past and make them as dramatically compelling as you would if you could talk to some veteran, say, of the Iraq War who's still alive.
Well, you certainly mastered it, man. I mean, and the Ken Burns effect, it's like, that was at the time where everybody was trying to be, everybody could suddenly be a filmmaker, right?
That's right. Well, this is what Steve did. I mean, by inventing this, he made us all filmmakers. It democratized it all. And what you needed were the tools to be able to polish it. I mean, my kids now and my grandkids can do stuff with this that I wouldn't have any idea how to do it. And one of the cruder tools is the Ken Burns effect, which has saved lots of vacations, lots of birthdays, lots of memorial services, lots of bar mitzvahs,
That's a great point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people say, oh, like, man, you didn't ask him for a cut? And I said, no, I don't do commercial endorsements. But if I'd said, like, I want 1/100th of a penny every time it's used, he'd go, okay, we'll call it the pan and zoom effect. You know what I mean? It was like the great thing was to just sort of split the difference in the middle and not be so obstinate that I couldn't yield. I don't do commercial endorsements, so it was sort of awkward. But at the same time, I wasn't endorsing a thing. I was endorsing an idea of how you use and manipulate images, which is what I do for an image,
right?
Living.
And also you manipulate the past, right? Just in a way to bring it to life,
That's
right?
right. That's
it's
right.
almost like you're giving CPR to it in a way,
I can't believe that you said that because my mom was sick from the time I was born, like a couple years in.
And you grew up here in New York City, which is where we are.
No. I was born in Brooklyn. I grew up in Delaware and Michigan and came east to Massachusetts for college. But my mom had cancer from the very, very beginning, and she died
From when you were a child?
Yeah, when I was 11, and it was just a horrible, just the worst, shittiest growing up. And my dad had some mental illness stuff, so it was really hard. I'm not alone in having a hard childhood,
You're not,
but
it's not self-pity. You're just sharing.
But I watched my dad cry at a movie after my mom died, and I'd never seen him cry when she was sick or when she died or at the impossibly sad funeral. And I realized, it was 12 years old, I go, I'm going to be a filmmaker. This is 1965. This is, a long time ago, 60 years ago.
A great time.
It's way too long to be without a mom. But I said, that meant I'd be John Ford or Alfred Hitchcock, Hollywood directors and stuff like that. And then I went to Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts, and they were all documentary still photographers and filmmakers that reminded me that there's as much drama in what is and what was as anything the human imagination. So I'm a documentary filmmaker. By 22, I'm making films in history, and I've been doing that for 50 years. So I had a crisis, going through a crisis. My late father-in-law was an eminent psychologist, and I said to him one night, I said, I seem to be keeping my mom alive. And he goes, yeah, I bet you blew out your candles on your birthday wishing she'd come back. I go, how'd you know? And then he named 2 or 3 other things that only I knew, really intimate stuff.
Because that's how children like that operate?
Yes, and it's just, what grief does and what the inability to express it when you're 11 years old or when you're 2 years old and realize there's never a moment when there's not a sword of Damocles hanging over your head that's going to ruin everything. So I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, look what you do for a living. You wake the dead. You make Jackie Robinson and Abraham Lincoln come alive.